And interesting stories come out, Rob, ESPN, Adam Schefter, the great ESPN reporter. He was on a radio show with our friend and colleague here at Fox Sports, Mark Schlereth, and Mike Evans on yesterday. And Schefter said that he thinks there's a pretty decent chance that Matthew Stafford is finally traded away from the Detroit Lions. And I'm going to be honest, Rob. I would like to see it. I'll get into it to a little further in a minute. But what's interesting in this situation is that one, there was a story in The Athletic about this that played off the possibility of Stafford being traded. And an anonymous NFL offensive coach said this: if Stafford was traded to the 49ers, San Francisco 49ers, here's what he said: they would win a Super Bowl. Stafford would be in a real organization finally. He would bend to Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, the coach, and that offense, because there is such a history of success with that system. And Stafford would know he's not going to get hit in the head all the time like in Detroit. Now, you, of course, as we all know, were a longtime columnist in Detroit, very familiar with that organization, the Lions. What is your thoughts on it? I'll tell you quickly, I would like to see Matthew Stafford get traded. Now, I'm not going to go as far as this offensive coach and say he'd win a Super Bowl. But I would like to see him get traded to a better situation because I'm curious. Like, I don't think there's any denying that the guy's got talent, that he can throw the football. We know his numbers are, he's not a Hall of Famer to me, and I don't think to anybody else, but his numbers are Hall of Fame.
Yeah, his numbers are right because he's put up a lot of those Padford stats, Chris. Like this team. You got to remember, this team is so bad. They had 2 24-game road losing. I mean, the numbers are horrific.
Yeah, they're a horrible organization.
No doubt.
They really are. That's why, like I said, I'd like to see him somewhere else. And I'm not absolving him because look at Deshaun Watson, right? He's not winning in Houston, but he's putting up big numbers. And you can see that he's playing well. He's not just padding stats and all that. But still, I'd like to see him in a better organization and see what he could do.
Yeah, I get it, and I think that's just a knee-jerk reaction because you see he has a great arm, Chris. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like he can't play, but he just hasn't done enough. This was the number 1 overall pick in 2009. Chris, they've been to the playoffs 3 times, never won a division title.
Never won a playoff game, right?
Never won a playoff game. Seriously. Like just think about that. And yes, and stop saying he doesn't have any players. It's not true. Everybody keeps saying that. Calvin Johnson was one of his players, and Ndamukong Suh on defense. I can go on and on and on, Chris. I'm not saying that they were a Super Bowl contender, but they've had players on that team to where they could have possibly won a playoff game or two. And when you're that guy, the number 1 pick, sometimes you gotta go up above and beyond, Chris, and carry a team that's not that great, right? That's not that great, and he hasn't been able to do that. But I'm not saying all the time, but you could have. He had a moment, Chris. Everybody goes back to that playoff game at Dallas in 2015. Lions lose 24-20. And in that game, there was a call in that game that Lions fans always bellyache about, saying that they got jobbed and whatnot. And in that game, Tony Romo threw a couple of touchdown passes in the second half to lead a late fourth quarter comeback that rallied the Cowboys to win that game. Now, in that game, Chris, Matthew Stafford had the ball back with 2.5 minutes or so to go and a couple of timeouts. So was it set up even with the with the officials' call? He still had the ball. He's from suburban Dallas. Like, this was like made up for him. He could have led the Lions back and had a charge and win that game, and that would have been his coming out party. Do you know, like, it was set up. And you know what happened in that series, Chris, when they got the ball back with 2.5 minutes to go? 4 and out. That's what happened. And I'm not saying you got to win every playoff game or whatever, but to be in the league this long and that year, too, I think the Lions had the 5th best defense. Rob G, if you can you just look at, I think they had the 5th best defense in the league in that 2014 season. So don't act like there was never any players around him. And Ndamukong Suh, when he first broke into the league, Chris, was, what do you have, 10.5 sacks his rookie year?
Yeah.
Right? He was a monster.
They had the 3rd best defense in the league that year.
3rd best.
Right.
So 3rd best with a first overall pick, you're supposed to make something happen that year. And they didn't.
Well,
I'm not saying that he couldn't go to another team and have better success. All I'm saying is don't just blame it on other people. Stafford has been part of the problem as well. That's it.
Right. And I don't know that anybody – now, look, maybe this offensive coach does feel like it's everybody but Stafford. I agree with you. Some of this is on him. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I think what you've described is a quarterback who's not super special, right? There are those guys that are super special.
Absolutely.
And I'm not under the impression that Matthew Stafford is one of those guys. But I do think he could be much better in a better situation. Like, I think he's a guy that could win a playoff game here or there. I think he's a guy that, could lead his team to the postseason more often, in a better situation. Because like you said, he's got the arm. Now, you may have been around him. I don't, you poo-poo this, but I think intangibles are huge. And, is he a guy that lacks those intangibles? By all accounts, he's a pretty good guy, right? High character.
No, he's
right?
a good guy.
Yeah,
right. That's
yeah.
not even the issue. His teammates like him. That's,
that doesn't mean you've got those intangibles. But
No.
But
I'm
still
saying
a good guy. Yeah.
Right. He's a good guy. I don't think there's people who, but I think that people try to say, oh, well, nobody can win with that organization or whatever. He's put up a lot of numbers. He's made a lot of mistakes as well over the years, Chris. There were situations. I'll give you another one, and maybe you remember this. Here's another defining moment. A couple of years back, the Packers played at Detroit. Do you remember that for the division?
I do.
It was like,
that game.
remember that? It was a Sunday night game, Chris. All the Lions had to do, the Lions were going to win the division, Chris, get a bye, right, and have a home playoff game.
Yeah.
And Stafford stunk up the joint. Stunk up the joint in the biggest game right there. That was another moment. He had a chance to beat Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. That game was in Detroit, all set up for the Lions, and they got punked.
Well, here's an interesting twist on this story, Rob. We know they fired Matt Patricia, rightly so. Now they're looking for a new head coach. Some legislators in Michigan actually sent a letter to the Lions organization saying they should hire Saleh. What's his name? Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator with the 49ers. All right, they're saying they should hire him, which I don't think they did him any favors, because you want to be hired on your own merits. But look, if he gets it, great. I mean, I think he is a guy that's well respected in the league. He's from Michigan. That's why they're pushing him and all that. He's Arab American too, which would be
which
that
would be
would
your
break
first
some
in
ground.
the NFL.
Yeah. So I think it'd be a fine hire. I just don't want anybody thinking, oh, it's because of these legislators. You know what I mean? Whatever. But and you wonder, would the organization feel like they're being pressured, or it just is not a good look to have legislators tell you who to hire? That's why I said I don't know that they did him any favors.
What does that tell you about the organization right there?
All right. They think they can run it. These are dudes that spend all day, they looking at football all day, and they're telling you who to hire. So you're right. But Tony Dungy threw in an interesting name, Jim Caldwell.
What?
Jim Caldwell, who was already the Lions coach and was fired a few years ago when they hired Matt Patricia. And the reason the Lions fired him, they said, was because he went 9-7 in back-to-back years. I think one of those they made the playoffs, right?
Yep.
And he made the playoffs 2 out of 4 years. I believe. Yeah, 2 out of 4 years.
And if you look at it, it also, Chris, was 2 of the last 3. So you know what I mean? Like
well, he was 11-5, which is great, especially for the Lions. 7-9, and then 9-7, 9-7.
Right.
And they said 9 wins is not enough, and Patricia didn't even get close to 9 wins.
Right.
So,
I think he won 13 total.
See, here's my thing, and I obviously we want your opinion on this too, but Caldwell, to me, has not gotten any breaks. Like, remember, he took over in Indianapolis. They go 14-2. And
I was mad that year, Chris, because they were 14-0, and remember, they didn't want to go for being undefeated, and they rested players. And I was like, you're on the cusp of doing something that historic. I understand about the playoff run, Chris, but you remember that? I remember he got a lot of pushback.
That was something, and they did get to the Super Bowl, so you're right. It looked like, it didn't hurt them. But you're right, like, that's something you would always be remembered for. Even if you didn't win the Super Bowl.
Right.
You still went 16-0, which only one team has done that. The Patriots, and they didn't win the Super Bowl either, of course. But then he goes 10-6, and then 2-14, and that's when he was fired in Indianapolis. Then he goes to Detroit and has 3 out of 4 winning seasons with a horrible organization. So I think this is a guy whose name should be out there. And I'm going to say this, Rob. Look, if I'm Detroit, I think you got to do your due diligence. I don't think there's one name you just automatically, this is our guy. But I wouldn't be opposed to a Jim Caldwell going back there. They got a lot of different guys. Obviously, Stafford's still there. But, a lot of different guys. And I wouldn't be opposed to bringing him back just because, I wouldn't not bring him back just because he was already with the organization. Where you at on that?
I think the ship has sailed, and now there's a lot of revisionist history about Caldwell's tenure there and, how great it was because Matt Patricia was so terrible. And, Chris, he did a fine job there. But the problem was, even when he was winning, he, again, like Stafford, they couldn't beat the teams they needed to beat. And that was the bigger thing. And so now you look at Patricia, who couldn't beat anybody. So Jim Caldwell, Chris, looks better, right? He's like, oh, wow. What? But there were those frustrating games when they played a good team and they could never win those games that they needed. So I think that ship has sailed. I think that the Lions, shouldn't go backwards because if they were to rehire him and then Chris couldn't recapture that, it would just be another disaster. Like, look at the Lions. They hired a guy they fired, and then he flopped again, and then they had to fire him. So I just think, how it looks sometimes, it wouldn't look right. It just wouldn't look right. Even if you acknowledge that maybe you made a mistake, and you could say that. We made a mistake with Caldwell.
They clearly did. Yeah.
Right, and I agree with that because at the time, he was only fired because Bob Quinn wanted to get his dude in there. You know what I mean? That was one of those buddy things.
Yep. That's what we've been talking about. All right.
How you doing, Chris? How you doing, Rob?
What's up, man?
Hey, before I dive into Stafford, Rob, I owe you a thank you for the amount of money you've won me over the last decade. I should pay you as my bookie. I always pick the opposite of what you said, and I've made so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
On the Stafford front, realistically, I think he's getting the short end because if I ask you right now, if you put him on the Rams, just take away Goff, put Stafford, you tell me that the Rams aren't a top 2 team with a straight face.
Top 2?
Well, wait a minute. Goff went to the Super Bowl with the 5th best offense in the history of the NFL. What are you saying?
I'm a Rams fan. Trust me. I know exactly what Goff did, but it's not. Let's be real. Goff is great with dinking and dunking and letting Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods run after they get the screen pass.
But what does it matter? I'm on how Tom Brady did that, and people praise him in New England. I think that's Matthew Stafford has a big arm, no doubt about it, but he also has made a lot of bad decisions. I've given you a couple of circumstances where he could have shook out of that. He could have won big games. He could have beat Green Bay and Detroit. He could have come back and beat Dallas in that playoff game in 2015. There have been moments, and it ain't about the defense.
I agree, but can you tell me an offensive lineman for him the last decade? Can you name an offensive lineman?
We could do that. I just gave you. They had the 3rd best defense in 2014. third best defense. They went to the playoffs, and they didn't win. And Stafford didn't have a great game in that playoff
Here's
game.
what I'll say. Look, and I think, again, I said it. I'd love to see Stafford in a better organization, and I think he could have success. Here's the problem. We can't give him a pass for what he's done in Detroit because that's just not how things work. We can't sit here and say, well, what if Aaron Rodgers had been in New England with Bill Belichick? I mean, you say it for a minute, but you can't dwell on that. We just can't because it didn't happen. So it's up to Aaron Rodgers to make the best out of Green Bay and Tom Brady to do what he did in New England. And now, it just doesn't. You could drive yourself crazy trying to do things like that, jump through hoops like that, right?
Exactly.
And so, again, I'd like to see him elsewhere. If it happens, then we can see it. But I certainly wouldn't say they'd be the second best team in the league. Is basically
I just
what
think
he was
that,
saying.
people look and they just, Stafford, yeah, if he was on a good team, it would be like unbelievable. He'd win 4 Super Bowls. Chris,
that's way too far
I'm not buying that. Brandon in Dallas, you're on the Odd Couple, Fox Sports Radio.
Hey, Chris. Hey, Rob. Hey,
What's
great
up,
to talk
man?
to you guys.
Thank you, buddy.
Hey, and I just want to talk about Matt Stafford real quick. Now, I want to say I'm not giving him a pass on anything. He's been in Detroit for a long time. There's no excuse for not winning anything. That's just inexcusable. But I've been watching him for a long time since Georgia, and he's a really good quarterback. But I really think that he's really good suited for what Bruce Arians is trying to do in Tampa Bay right now. I think he's better suited for that offense right now than Tom Brady is.
He has a great arm. I don't disagree.
He's got a better arm, certainly at this point.
He's got a better arm. I agree with that. I don't think that's crazy. I think that's legit. I think that's right, Chris.
I think it just suits his game better.
I think to your point, though, Rob, he make a lot more mistakes, too.
Yes. He might, like Jameis Winston at the 30. I'm not saying he's going to have 30, Chris.
Right.
But he might have 25.
Lead the league in interceptions, yeah.
Yes.
So there's a give and take. And look, I mean, like I said, if I'm a team, maybe in Indianapolis, maybe a Chicago, a team that really needs a quarterback, I'd definitely be looking at Matt Stafford. But
a change
I'm not
of
gonna
scenery,
say,
an organization could help him. But all we're saying, I think I speak for you when I say we can't give him a complete pass that everything bad was everybody else and not him.
He's got to prove it.
Let's squeeze one more in. Keith in Peoria, Illinois. You're on the Odd Couple, Fox Sports Radio. What's up, Keith?
Hey, what's up, fellas? How y'all doing?
Doing
We're
good.
good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing okay, man. Hey, I would just like to say, I can't give him a real harsh pass because he's been really bad in that organization and he's been there a while. But there are some teams that could use a Matthew Stafford, use that arm. The guy that just got off talking about maybe Tampa Bay, that was a good choice. I think if you put him somewhere, don't get me wrong, I'm a Cowboy fan, but these Bears up here in Chicago, they need a quarterback.
They would die to take Matthew Stafford. I agree with that. I think they would.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if they had him, whoa, you talking Super Bowl bound with that defense.
No,
they don't have anything.
Look, see, there you go, Keith. Going off the rails. I knew he couldn't keep it up.
You think
Keith's
so?
always calling up, ripping me. You went off. Look, they be good. All right, and let's just let it play out. But Super Bowl bound?
Super Bowl automatic.
Slow down.
Matthew Stafford, Chris, add Matthew Stafford, water, and stir, and you go into the Super Bowl.
Slow down, Keith. Slow down. I know you got excited, but relax.